Welcome to Caffeinated Flicks,
where we drink coffee and celebrate diverse directors.
I'm Celeste.
And I'm Kenzie.
Definitely not professional here.
No, not even in the slightest. We try. Yeah. We like to pretend. We're now 18 episodes into our podcasting career, quote unquote, and that's as professional as we get. So growing every time, and every episode comes with its own challenges.
Yeah,
so.
no, I understand completely. Yeah, doing a show with a regular co-host, it is like totally different, and there is something every time. Sometimes it's great, sometimes it's like, uh-oh, that didn't go well.
Oh yeah. Yeah, we've been there.
That's when you're actually editing and you're like, damn,
I can't use any of that. Yeah.
yeah. I do a lot of that too.
Whoops. Kenzie, wasn't there like a full episode we recorded and this was like one of our first episodes and we didn't think to play it back and we went the whole episode and it was just bad audio. And you were like, I have to go through it again.
Doing a redo is always very humbling.
Yeah.
And that's the other thing about having it be one of your first episodes. You sit there and you're like, okay, we're still learning.
Yeah.
A little bit better. You can finally hear Celeste.
Yeah. I've had the worst audio. Oh, well.
Today, we are presented with a wonderful guest of Kevin Krein, a.k.a. Kevy Fly, who is the host of the Anhedonic Headphones podcast and the co-host of a Reasonable Day podcast. And Kevin is an award-winning music writer, and he's based in Minnesota. So welcome, Kevin.
Thank you so much for having me. This is such a treat. And also, I was talking with my friend Alyssa, who is my co-host on A Reasonable Day, and I was like, I've never been a guest on a podcast before. I have always been the one in charge and steering the craft and asking the questions. So this is going to be like the tables have turned. I'm going to have to really play against type to not direct things, because I'm not the one fidgeting with the levels the entire time. I'm just sitting back and chopping it up with you all. So.
Oh my gosh, how exciting. That's so funny because I'm not a controlling person at all. So if at any point you feel the need to just jump in, I'll be like, okay.
Well, how we do this on one of my shows is we talk about and you'd be like, I accidentally invited the gentlest mansplainer onto this show. We're going to just eject me right from the room. Kevy Fly is done.
Well, at least you're gentle about it. And at least
that is one of my other AKAs on the show, is I'm the gentlest explainer, according to my co-host.
I love it. And speaking of which, because I've listened to some of your podcast and because we follow each other on Instagram and whatnot, I know that you just recently went to the Taylor Swift concert.
Yeah, so Alyssa and I went to see the Eras tour in Minneapolis, and we were going to go regardless. And then we decided that it was going to be a great way to end the season of A Reasonable Day, which we did from January until just recently. We're taking the summer off. And so the final episode is us preparing to go to the tour and then being there and then talking about it afterwards. So it was a wild time. It was a lot of fun. And so that episode is available wherever you get your podcasts. But I also wrote a big old think piece about my experience at the show that'll be up very soon as well.
Oh my God, I can't wait to hear that. I'm definitely going to listen.
3.5 hours with Taylor Swift. It was a wild evening. Yeah.
Wasn't it?
Celeste here is a gigantic Taylor Swift fan, and she doesn't hold it against me because I'm not.
Somehow.
I used to not be, but 4 years ago I made this hard pivot to girl pop, and I haven't looked back, and it's been incredible.
She's turned a lot of people. She's made her way in. People who did not used to be fans are fans, but yeah, ever since I went to the Eras tour, right afterwards, all I wanted to do was talk about it. I wanted someone to bring it up. It was one of those Mean Girl situations where I wanted people to talk about it, but I wanted other people to bring it up and talk about it. It was really hard. And so I was just hoping every time I wore my Eras shirt.
This podcast is not actually going to be about this movie at all. I'm just
sorry, guys.
Steering this conversation right into the Eras tour.
Love and Taylor Swift.
And y'all, you would have gone one of the early shows, right, in Arizona, is that correct?
I went to the opening show.
Oh my gosh.
Yes.
That's so exciting. So exciting.
It was
Yes.
for real. So yeah, I know.
From what she told me, even buying the tickets was a harrowing experience.
Oh, I could
So-
go,
Oh,
I
I'm
could
sure
go
you went
long
through
on
it
my
too.
6 hours in the Ticketmaster queue with my laptop open.
Yep. I was right there. Yep. I took the day off as a personal day, but it turned into a Taylor Swift day.
I had a desk job at the time, thankfully, so I had just my laptop open at my desk, and then like I drove home with it open, and then it like
Oh my
reconnected to the queue when I got home, and I was just walking around my house with
Dang.
it, and I was like outside with my dog with it. I'm like, we can't go too far because we're gonna lose the Wi-Fi signal, so we need to take this to the house right now because I gotta buy some
Oh,
tickets.
no.
And he was like, sir, please.
That's dedication. Oh my gosh. When we were going to get in the Capital One queue, we thought we didn't have a Capital One card. And so my mom and I were like, who do we know with the Capital One card? Like, we were like desperate measures. I won't get into it because I won't stop talking about it. But I love that.
It's
Like, I have so
for you to
much I
launch-
want to say.
You're launching your solo podcast this summer, just all about the
Right?
Eras tour.
Pretty much. I feel like we could. We have enough stuff that we can talk about.
Just
Enough
reaching out to different
content,
people, be like, "Yo, did you go to the
Right?
tour? Hit me up. Let's talk about it."
Right?
Yeah. One of my two work besties, she went to the Taylor Swift tour in Houston. And then my other friend, she lives in New Jersey. And as
Oh,
far as I
okay.
know, she hasn't had the chance to go yet. But she texted our little group chat to see if going to Scotland to go see Taylor Swift would be crazy. And
No.
I was like, I can't say because I
you
would
can't
never
weigh in.
personally
You
go
can't weigh in
to.
on that. Yeah.
I was like, I would never go to a Taylor Swift concert in general, but I would go to Scotland.
I would have been the person that'd be like, yes, girl, go. Like when we saw her South America tour dates, my mom and I were like, should we go to Mexico City? Like it was a real conversation.
You're on Travelocity looking
Right?
at flights.
Might as well.
Yeah. From here, that's really just a hop, skip, and jump in Arizona.
Yeah.
Like, it's really not that bad. I'll go with you guys. I just won't go to the concert. I'll just hang out in Mexico City.
Yeah,
I want to go
you
to
can drop us off.
Teotihuacan, so it's fine. I'm just like
That's amazing.
attaching myself as a tail to everybody's Taylor Swift like concert tours.
Yeah.
As like an excursion.
I live like an hour south of the Twin Cities, and then my friend lives in St. Paul, so we just had to like take the train into Minneapolis, and it was like very convenient and everything.
Oh,
But I
nice.
was just like, I imagine the commuting and the people traveling in, and yeah, it was a lot of people. Wild time. I was glad. I'm not a big concert person, so I was glad that I was able to like muster the
Excitement.
hold on to that excitement and like sustain it for the time that I was there.
I love it. It was seriously an experience.
Yeah, it was
The whole day. Like
I can
I re-
imagine.
it was. We went to breakfast where like miles away, Kenzie, was like past the 17. You know where that is.
Yeah.
At
yeah,
like
yeah.
7 a.m, and we saw groups, like girl groups, and we're like, I know they're here for Taylor. Like I just knew it.
Everybody's
Like-
dressed up. Yeah, we got to the
Yeah.
train station and we saw all these young people dressed up really nice. And
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, they're all going to where
Yes.
we're going to.
Yeah. Should have
amazing.
really like aligned my personal calendar with the Taylor Swift calendar and like rented out my extra bedroom as like an
You should have.
Airbnb because I only live like 12 minutes from the stadium where the Taylor Swift concert was. So
Yours was like a quick trip. So.
I know.
So what we could do like a tight 90 minutes about Taylor, but like what else
yeah.
do y'all want to know about me, about my endeavors before we start talking about our drinks and then getting into this motion picture that we have all watched?
Yes. So I'm really curious because you are an award-winning music writer.
I
So
am.
what got you into that?
So I started writing about music a decade ago. So my blog, Anhedonic Headphones, has been up since 2013. I used to work in radio and for a couple of years, and I had a daily show where I would play like an hour of music on a freeform station in my town. And I got a lot of complaints about what I would play occasionally, but the station would take it in stride and try to like keep me from the hot takes of like the old people listening to the AM radio in Northfield, Minnesota. Sometimes you just play a lot of Wu-Tang Clan and then you don't expect any pushback from people. And then when people push back, you're just like, what? We're all trying to find the guy who was doing this. Like, who put this song on? I don't know. So I did that for a couple of years. And by the end of 2012, I was very burned out. I was also like, my mental health was just like literally in the toilet. And I was like, as fun as this was at one point, this has stopped being fun and I need to step away. And my wife was like, you're going to be miserable if you're not doing something relating to music. Maybe you should write about music. And I was like, that's a really good idea. So I started the blog, started writing reviews, started writing like short little essays about things. And it has all become, that opened up a lot of other like writing opportunities over the last decade. And then all the pieces have become much longer and much more complicated now, but it has been kind of like a decade's worth of growth through writing about music. And I still love it. A lot of albums come out. I'm like, I can't wait to write about this. So it is like every time I'm like frustrated and don't want to keep it up or get very tired, I'm like, no, like a 10,000 word think piece about Taylor Swift. Like, yeah, I could probably pound that out in like a week and a half.
I think you got half of it just here.
Because I don't want to spoil like the podcast episode we did about it, but like we definitely like there is a lot about like the journey getting there, the tickets and everything. So like for folks listening at home, and then Celeste, if you're interested, yeah, the last episode of A Reasonable Day, episode 15, is where we go to the Eras tour. And it was like, yeah, it was really fun to talk about it. And my co-host has like never been in a position to like actually walk back through a concert experience in such detail before. So doing the post-show recap a couple days later when our voices had recovered was very nice, because the Saturday night, and then I had slept in her guest room on Sunday morning, like, and I sounded like I had smoked an entire carton of Newports. And so I was just doing a pod with me being like, how's it going? It was just like not really gonna. Now, and hers was also like very close to that, so we needed like 48 hours to officially recover, and then we were good.
Yeah, you come home. So my husband and I actually met at a concert.
Oh, that's very charming.
Yes, so we went very old fashioned. We met at a concert
in the mosh pit.
Did he elbow you in the face and then he's mesmerized by your black eye?
We met at a rock concert,
yeah,
and I saw him from across the room. I was like, my whole goal of this night is to find the cutest guy in the room and make out. I found the cutest guy in the room, did not make out with him, but I got his number. So
there you go.
Close enough. And we've been together for 10 years now, so something worked. But from that experience, like, we go to concerts regularly.
Yeah.
And I have found out that no matter what, your ears are always going to be ringing for at least the next 3 days. Your voice is going to be scratchy as hell.
Yeah.
And it's going to feel like you're hungover, even if you didn't drink. Like, no matter what, your head's going to be fuzzy.
That's the thing is like, I just turned 40 and I'm kind of like, oh, I'm way too old for this shit. And I just was like, I was really worried about what my body was going to do after standing during the Taylor Swift show, because I was just like, yo, my spine cannot take 3 hours of standing. And I was in rough shape, but I was actually expecting to like need to be like rolled into my car the next day and just like gently coasting away. But like, yeah, stuff at a certain point, stuff doesn't start snapping back the way it used to.
What are you doing now?
But yeah. Like, I am the guy who I do bring earplugs to the show. I will usually wear them during the opening act, and then I will like fuck up my hearing during the main show. But occasionally the main show is also, I'm kind of like, oh, I have work in the morning. I'm like, those right in.
Yeah. That's one of those things where like, I love going to concerts, but it sucks that they're always on like a Tuesday or a Thursday.
Oh, yeah.
I'm like,
oh, yeah.
Big school night energy. Yeah.
Yes. I know. Oh, no.
But I think the last time I actually went to a concert, it was on a Monday night. It was like an hour away from me. So it was in downtown Mesa, which Celeste knows that. And so I went to a concert Monday night. It was fabulous. It was fantastic. Went ahead and did a bit of beer hopping or brewery hopping beforehand.
Yeah.
And
you got a pregame. You really do.
Yeah, it was so much fun. And then the next morning at like 4 o'clock in the morning, I got up, went to the airport, flew to New York for work. And
that is a life that I will never know. Actually, my heart, I had like a palpitation just hearing about that.
Yeah, but Kenzie's still like in her
You're really
20s.
out here.
Yeah. You're still in your 20s. Give it some time, Kenzie.
You're the next 6 months. I will be entering the 30s club here shortly.
Oh, no.
And most of the time I feel like I'm in the 30s club.
I mean, you could honestly be like, hey, I'm turning 29 again, y'all. Like that.
Yeah. I don't want to. I felt like I'm 35 for the last like 3 years. So we're fine. But anyway, I guess we should move on to what are we drinking for coffee today?
Oh, you go first, Kevin. You're a guest.
Oh, bless your hearts. No, with the willing suspension of disbelief with this show and everything, it's kind of like it's not morning, so I'm not drinking coffee. It's also it's currently 6:30 p.m. Central Time, and like I am mad reckless. I will have like afternoon coffee sometimes. Right now, I have not. Today, I did because it has been a week. This morning I stopped at Caribou Coffee, which is like a Minnesota chain. It's like
They're
like
so
Starbucks.
good.
Well, you travel for work, so I'm sure you probably
Yeah.
have stopped at the Minneapolis airport and probably had it. But so I had a mint condition, which is like a fancy drink. I get it with oat milk, dark chocolate, no whip, and then an extra shot of espresso. So it's like a minty, chocolatey delight. So I treated myself this morning. Very delightful. I do start every day with an entire pot of Death Wish coffee because I do need it to get me going. My wife is always like, is your heart going to stop? And I'm like, I'm here for a good time, not a long time. And I would have died doing what I loved, which is drinking this whole ass pot of coffee. And so, but for right now, because it is the evening, I have moved into coffee cider from Duluth Cider, which is great. Shout out to Duluth Cider. They make this. They have a couple of different lines that they can and sell around the state, and so there is this coffee cider, and it is like it's hard to describe. It's very sweet. The coffee, I don't know, like it's kind of there, but it's just like it's so flavorful and robust. I do love this. It is an acquired taste, but yeah, this is good. I was saving this last one that I have. And this was a perfect occasion.
Oh my gosh, I love that.
That's what I have put away so far today.
I love that. Celeste knows. So I'm a gigantic craft brewery person.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And so I love to go to different breweries and I love to try different beers. But for the most part, my favorite beer style is an Imperial Stout.
Okay.
And a lot of those are like heavy on coffee notes.
Yeah.
And they're fantastic. Or like a coffee porter or something like that. Those are some of my favorites. So I am right there with you. I've never heard of a coffee cider though.
This is the only one I've ever seen. Like I have been in my cider era for a couple of years now.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them are real bad. Some of them are just so delightful.
They're getting better.
They've come a long way from like your Strongbows or like whatever you find,
or your Angry Orchard,
like whatever you used to like are used to finding in the wild. There are like smaller cideries that are putting things out, but yeah, the Duluth cidery is great, and they have a couple. This is their best one. So anyone who comes to the great state of Minnesota, stop in Duluth, grab some ciders, holla at your boy when you're on your way down.
I will have to take a gander at that. So.
Okay.
What are you drinking today, Celeste? I saw what I think is a matcha.
Yeah, I'm a basic. I'm so sorry, guys. This morning, I got a Dunkin' iced coffee, and then,
Don't love Dunkin'. Those donuts, though. For real.
And then on Billy's way home, my fiance, he's like, do you want a coffee? And I was like, the answer is always yes. So he picked me up a matcha from Starbucks.
So, Mackenzie, what do you have? What are you drinking today?
So today, let's see. This morning, I had my rice mushroom coffee that I told you about on the last episode there, Celeste.
Yeah.
But so I was telling Celeste before you came on, Kevin, that I've had a migraine all day. And so I actually took a nap right before this.
How are you feeling, by the way, from your nap? Because I have hot takes about naps. I want to hear how you feel before naps catch some strays from me on this conversation.
I don't like to take naps for the most part, unless I really have to.
Okay.
And most of the time, if I have to, it's because I'm not feeling well.
Okay.
And so for me, it's like a medical necessity. Like,
Gotcha.
So I took a nap. I woke up from it and I was like, oh, where am I? What am I? Am I in a cave in like the Appalachian Mountains someplace?
And that is what I was gonna say, is that when I try not to succumb to a nap because I know how terrible I will feel afterwards, but when I do take a nap and I do wake up, regardless of how long it's for, I wake up, I don't know where I am. I don't know what year it is. I don't know who the president is. I feel like I have been in a coma. I like it, and I have the groggiest feeling that I am unable to shake for the remainder of my day.
Oh, wow.
I agree. I feel like naps get too much hype. Like, you don't feel great afterwards.
Speak on it. Teach these devils.
I think it's from people who actually can sleep well. I'm not one of those people.
Oh, yeah, same. Well.
Yeah. My husband, on the other hand, he sleeps fantastically, and he sleeps fantastically every night.
And you're like, Reza, frickin', you're sleeping so well.
I know. I'm like, how do you do that? The second that he has a night where he has to like lay in bed because he can't fall asleep, he's like, I don't know how you do this. I want to kill myself. I'm like, oh my God. Welcome to my world.
My wife really enjoys napping and resting, and I'm just kind of like, I don't know how you. I'm like, I don't know how you do it. I don't know why you do it. I don't know what you get out of this. I'm so sad. Like, she's just like, you're the sleepiest gal, and that's okay.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. I will,
not for me,
because I don't get enough sleep ever. I will never throw shade to somebody who actually can get sleep. I'm just like,
yeah, I don't want to be like a dick about it, but I'm just kind of like, I can't sleep, and you're just like snoozing all day, snoozing on the couch.
Yeah. Oh, but what I was going to say is, so my husband will sleep, but then when he does nap, which he can fall asleep whenever he wants to, when he does nap, it's for no shorter than 3 hours.
Oh, yeah. That's how Billy is too. Like, he'll nap at like
shout out to these partners who are just so smoozy, because I'm just like, I do not understand.
Yeah. If he wants to take a nap like at 4 or 5, that's it. That's his bedtime.
Yeah.
Like, he's not waking up until the next day. Yep. I'm like, how? But they do it.
So anyway, you woke yourself up, you've pulled yourself together.
Oh yeah.
You're functioning enough to do a podcast.
I somehow woke up 15 minutes before we had to jump on, which was great timing on my part. But then I needed to go make myself some coffee. And luckily we have an espresso maker. And so I made myself a mocha. And then
how delightful.
I know. I made myself a mocha and I added a pump of caramel to it. And I put my almond milk in there. And I'm just like, yep, this is great.
There you go.
This is perfect.
Mochas are having a moment.
As they should. All the time. Personally.
Sounds good.
Well, cool. Should we jump into our movie?
We should.
Yeah. Get into this movie finally.
This is great. And I'm excited to talk about this movie because like I've always wanted to watch this movie since I had like read that essay that I was telling you all about. So we're talking about Love and Basketball. I don't want to like spoil it for the listeners if y'all were going to do like a big introduction. But so we're talking about Love and Basketball, and I had never seen Love and Basketball until I threw myself at the chance. Mackenzie, you were kind enough to be like, well, do you want to come on our show? And I was like, absolutely. And so I was like, well, I read that essay and this will be a great time to watch this movie. And so I watched it before coming on the show, but you were giving me kind of like the criteria for like how you pick the movies and everything. And I have a couple of like DVDs that I've purchased recently that are like on top of the entertainment stand. And one is Malcolm X by Spike Lee. And I was kind of like, well, do I want to suggest like a 3-hour film to these two gals? And then I was like, I don't know. No, we'll pass on that one. And then the other one was Belly, which is a Hype Williams film starring DMX and Nas. And I don't know if either of you are familiar with this. It's from 1998. Whoa. It is incredible. It is so problematic, so violent, but the opening sequence is one of the most impressive opening sequences in film history. The cinematography is impeccable. I think about the opening sequence of that film all the time. And I was like, do I want to suggest Belly to two people that I don't know in person who have never heard of this movie and are going to be like, sir, why did you pick this movie with DMX and Nas? And I'm going to be like, what's a hood classic? But so when you said Love and Basketball, I'm like, this is perfect. So I appreciate you throwing this one out here and then extending the opportunity for me to chop it up with you for the program here.
Yeah, absolutely.
That sounds amazing. I want to watch that movie now.
Belly?
Right? Yeah.
They did do a 25th anniversary Blu-ray reissue for those of you who still like bang with physical media. It is like a wildly problematic film though. It's like the dialogue is terrible, it's violent, it's misogynistic, and the acting is just like
nothing else.
The acting is the worst. Big
it's
surprise.
DMX and Nas.
Big surprise. Yeah. Nasir Jones, not a good actor.
Yeah.
So are we ready to talk about Love and Basketball?
Shall we get into
Let's
it?
do it.
Yeah, so really quicksies. So our director is Gina Prince-Bythewood. Just a little snippets about her. She was born June 10th, 1969. So she's a Gemini. And she studied at UCLA Film School, where she was a member of the UCLA's track and field team. And I also read that when she originally applied for a film program there, they denied her. She did not get in. And so she ended up writing a letter so that way they can go ahead and change their minds. So she ended up getting in because of that. So I thought that was pretty cool. And upon graduation, she was hired as a writer on the TV series A Different World. She continued to write and produce other series before transitioning to directing, which Love and Basketball was her directorial debut. She's also known for The Secret Life of Bees, The Woman King, and The Old Guard, which made her the first Black woman to direct a superhero film, which I had no idea. Alrighty, so getting into the cast. So our leads are going to be Sanaa Lathan, so Monica Wright, which is played by Sanaa Lathan. And then we've got Quincy, a.k.a. Q, played by Omar.
Omar Epps is timeless. I adore Omar Epps. Like ever since I saw him in House, adore Omar Epps. So I will watch just about everything he's in, forwards and backwards. He is a very handsome man.
And then, this has a stellar cast in it. We've
amazing.
Got Pratt,
yeah,
Gabrielle
it does. It really
Union,
does.
Regina Hall, the
Tyra
friggin'
Banks.
Allstate guy.
Tyra Banks.
We're in good hands.
I know.
Y'all are
crazy.
talking about Dennis Haysbert as the Allstate guy, and I kept referring to him in my notes as President David Palmer from 24.
What? 24.
Every
the TV
time,
show 24?
in a number of the original seasons when Kiefer was still on it, Dennis Haysbert was first was a senator in one of the seasons, and then he was elected president, and so he's always President David Palmer to me. And in my notes, the entire time I'm watching the movie, I'm like, yo, President Palmer, why did you have an affair with that girl in the hotel room?
And the entire time I'm like, maybe we're not in good hands.
He also, it's funny, he turns up in Heat. He's like a getaway driver in Heat. And the whole time I'm just like, no, President David Palmer, don't get back into a life of crime.
Oh my gosh. I didn't realize he had such an extensive acting career, outside of commercials.
Right.
He's good. He's cashing those checks, those insurance checks and this 24 checks. He's eating good all the time for sure.
In the neighborhood, maybe? Or
that's so crazy.
Sorry, that was an Applebee's joke.
You know what? Hashtag sponsor content. Applebee's, you have Impossible Burger now. I fuck with that. Yes. So if you haven't, so Applebee's, y'all have whimsical mixed drinks that I enjoy, and then Impossible Burgers and waffle fries. Applebee's, sponsor these podcasts, please.
For sure, because the last time I went to Applebee's, they had literally nothing I could eat.
Nothing.
Not even salad. I was like,
yeah.
And that's So my wife went to like a business luncheon at Applebee's and she was expecting to like not eat anything. And she came home at night and she was like, "You're never going to believe this." And I was like, "What?" And she was like, "They have the Impossible Burger at Applebee's." And I was like, "Say less, we're going."
That's
I'm so
amazing.
excited.
Yeah,
That
get
is
yourself a
exciting.
drink with a stupid name that's like with the size of your noggin. The cups are so goddamn big. The thing is like a goblet that comes.
It's got half the alcohol than you'd actually expect in that size of a drink, but it's definitely worth the cost still.
They go down real smooth, and if you pound it, like you get fucked up at Applebee's for real.
I got a little buzz when I got a drink there once. So yeah, they they do the job. Yeah.
We're making an Applebee's run.
How exciting.
You get to your 20th episode and you're like, it's time to celebrate. I know. I noticed that Kobe Bryant is listed on this cast list. May I ask you all about that?
He makes an appearance.
Yep.
Yeah. So it was in one of the trivia.
Because I think this is at the time when he's in the Lakers.
Yeah. During one of Q's games, he's on the sidelines.
Okay.
And you
Okay,
you really got
got
to pay attention.
Cast billing. Okay, I did not know.
Because he's a big name. Yeah.
The great late Kobe Bryant.
I would say arguably Tyra Banks is bigger. She deserves more justice for Kyra.
Did you immediately think life size also? Did anybody else watch?
So here's
good.
No, but this is going to go off the rails very quickly, but I didn't know Tyra Banks was in this. She turns up at the end. I took a photo of it and sent it to Alyssa, my co-host, because we had just done an episode of A Reasonable Day about America's Next Top Model, where she sat me down to watch an episode of America's Next Top Model out of context, and then we talked about it, and she gave me a quiz about the show. And so when Tyra turns up in this movie, she was like, "Yo, Tyra!" And so I was so fucking thrilled.
Oh my gosh, I love that, and she looked amazing
already. So do you want to go ahead and get into the ratings, Kevin? Do the 10 out of 10?
Yeah. So the 10 out of 10 rating for Love and Basketball is a movie forever in my heart. I have probably watched this film 100 times. I love it. I recently watched it again after around 8 years of seeing it last, and I was not disappointed. The visuals, the storytelling, the Regina Hall voice, Mom, the music, all the emotions, all brought me back to the moment I first saw it. The acting is superb. It led me to watching many great films of that time. I highly recommend this movie to any sports fans, romantics, lovers, and friends. Well worth a watch.
Oh my gosh.
I love the vision of lovers and friends.
Honestly, it is for lovers and friends, for real. Like, and like the weird collision or like convergence of the two, like it's a perfect film. You enter in as pals, maybe you leave as something else.
When I read it, I did not read Mom. I read Moom, and I was like, what is that? I was like, I'm like, maybe they'll reference it in the movie.
When I have the shared doc the run of show that you graciously sent me the other day. And so I had that pulled up and I was looking at the review and I saw I did also initially do a line read of Moom before we started recording. And I was like, that is certainly not what the intent is. Love and Basketball, a film for Mooms. Take your Moom to see the movie.
Oh my gosh. I love that so much.
Right.
All right.
Alrighty. Kenzie.
Shall I do the 1 out of 10?
Yeah. This is rough.
They always are. I will let you know, they're always rough. What I love about IMDb is that sometimes there are movie reviews from like when the movie first came out. And so sometimes we've got reviews from like 2000. And I'm like, yo.
And when the internet was in its infancy and someone was on dial-up internet, had to be like, I fucking hated this.
They had to work to make a review happen on the
internet. They're using their AOL free trial minutes to hop online to roast this movie.
Oh, all right. So 1 out of 10. Bad movie. One of the most boring movies I've had to sit through. It's completely formulaic. Just a cookie cutter cutout of a movie. You could predict every scene in this movie just from knowing the genre, as this movie adds nothing new. The dialogue is never funny, interesting, or The acting is weak. The soundtrack is annoying. All right, clearly you've never heard music before.
I'm going to spend a lot of time going long on the soundtrack. So like this person, honestly, it is on site for this reviewer for real. Like the soundtrack is annoying. Sir, madam, please.
The soundtrack is fantastic.
So many goddamn notes about the soundtrack.
Yes, we have the right person for this movie. I'm so excited.
There were so many times when I gasped when I was watching it, when there was like a sound cue that came up. I was just like, things are happening.
Let's see. Basically, everything looks to have been done by an amateur filmmaker. Nothing fresh, memorable, or entertaining in this movie, combined with the fact that it is long, gives it an easy thumbs down. Sorry, fans.
It is long, but it also doesn't feel long until at least the fourth act, when it kind of drags a little bit, but like definitely in the second and third act,
right?
The pacing
I feel like it went by pretty fast.
It went pretty quickly. Yeah. I do want to say, before we start the recap and like talking about notes and everything, and like I'm interested to find out what your relationships respectively with this movie is, but it is disappointing, as many films from this, like there is like a span of time from like the late 90s into certainly the early 2000s where there are a lot of movies that I think have like a somewhat large cult following, or were successful and have a following, that are just straight up not available to stream. And video stores, obviously a relic of the past. And so I thought this was on Hulu, and it is not. It is on Hulu if you subscribe or like pay for like something extra, extra. And so I did, shout out to the public library system. I did check out the DVD of this from a library in my library network. I did an interlibrary loan to get this to my home, and I savored the DVD with the interactive menu, and I loved it. It was a nice throwback to the time when this was released. It was just wild to me that this shit was just like not anywhere to be found.
I know. It boggles my mind when there are movies that we can't find like really anywhere. And there have been a couple of our movies where I'm just like, really? Why?
Yeah. It's shocking.
Also, I just caught Allstate Dad in the notes on the recap, and I started chuckling to myself.
Oh my gosh. I love that so much.
I can't hear anything else. This man, he could be an amazing actor and put on an amazing performance, but I will forever be distracted because his voice is so iconic.
I just associate him with palling around with Kiefer Sutherland and not selling the insurance. But again, he's cashing checks. Like, happy for him.
Oh, he's good. Yeah, he's eating good. Oh, goodness. Alrighty.
Well, to break into some spoilers, I'd never seen this movie before.
I've seen it.
I had not seen it, and I had not thought about it until there's this essay by Hanif Abdurraqib that was for the Paris Review, which talks about this film, but also kind of like about the concept of one-on-one and kind of like the layers that means. And I loved this piece, and like the ending of it has like really stuck with me for a number of years. And so when this came up as like an opportunity to watch it, I have wanted to watch it, and this was kind of like a great time to like jump into it. And then when I started watching it, there's so many things that I loved. I was like the soundtrack and kind of like the tension and release and like the dynamic within the relationship of the two main characters. And it's like there's like a lot to talk about. And so yeah, I'm excited.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I remember when I was younger, this movie was huge. Like, it was so popular. People loved this movie. So,
would you say it was popping?
It was popping.
This movie was popping.
This movie was popping. Alrighty, any final comments before we get into the notes? Or
I don't think so.
Let's do it.
Let's do it. And then again, feel free to interrupt, add whatever.
Okay, yeah, I don't
kind of vague. I know.
Like, I don't want to steamroll all your shit here, but yeah, I do have some.
No, you're good. Steamroll away. Alrighty, so we open up to text on screen. First quarter in the 80s, so 1981. We've got three, I'm going to say tweenish boys playing basketball. A girl walks up, so that's going to be baby Monica, and one of the boys is young Q. She walks up to play basketball with them, and she basically schools them. One of the boys is like, or Q is like, yeah, girls can't play basketball. And she is dunking on them.
the misogyny right from the rip in that opening
From the
scene. I was
get-go.
kind of like, oh, these
Yeah.
children. Oh my gosh.
To be fair, I will say, so I grew up with only brothers.
Okay, so this is
And
accurate.
This is very accurate. Like, even though I was the oldest, I was like, I'm going to whip you and this is going to go.
Mhm.
This is how this is going to go. And we did martial arts growing up.
Oh, okay.
And so it was like tournaments, I'm winning no matter what.
Gotta prove them wrong.
Oh gosh.
Love it. Love it.
Something
So
about
cute and-
even though I'm a girl, I have to prove that I'm better. Like there was something about that.
Yeah, I think there was a lot of girls growing up in our time. So Q ends up pushing her to the ground. She busts her chin. So her mom is over here tending to her wound. She tells her she needs to stop playing around with boys. She's a lady, that spiel. And I love that when her mom walks away to get more gauze, she just looks in the mirror and she looks so proud of her scar. Did anybody?
Yeah, I did notice that.
Yeah.
That whole kind of, and this is something that we kind of that gets covered throughout the movies, like the relationship between Monica and her mother, and kind of like her mom really wishes that you kind of like lean more into like a feminine kind of role. But yeah, she gets pushed down very hard. She gets a big cut on her face. It leaves a scar that definitely lasts when they're adults. She still has it. But yeah, she definitely is not phased at all by it and is kind of like staring at it as like a badge of honor or like an
Badge of honor.
accomplishment
Love it.
in the mirror, which is like a really interesting, like, and then her dad is just kind of like obliviously bopping around because they're moving him into the house. So it is like the family. I do really like the exposition with like the family dynamic in both situations right away, like early in the film, just in terms of like kind of setting up the differences and how they're unpacked throughout the film.
Yeah. I will say I also grew up that way. Like there was one time my brother, like we were racing and he shoved me into like a concrete pillar, and so like I have this scar on my elbow, and I was just like, yeah, I got this scar. So what of it? Like I love having scars. I don't know why. I just have all these random scars. I'm like, yeah, no, that's a badge of honor. I know how to cook real well, so I've got all these scars all over my hands. It's fine.
I make good stories.
For whatever reason, I always thought that they were attractive. I can't figure out why. I'm like, oh yeah, no, it just makes me hot. It's fine. Same with all of my tattoos. It's fine.
That's how you landed your husband. He caught you in the light across the concert, and you had like all your scars out, and you're
All
just
these
like,
scars.
yo, you feeling this or not, my guy?
He likes the textured feel of them. Like I have a whole bunch of them on my knees, and he's like, that's so interesting. Kevin is currently dying.
That's hilarious.
Yo, come on for this one.
Oh, that's amazing. Okay.
Oh, feels good to laugh again here.
Oh, good.
Then we see baby Q back at home writing an I'm sorry card. And his home, like their house, like these people are well off. Allstate dad is well off in this movie too. He's living good.
Zeke McCall.
Zeke.
What a name also. But yeah, he's a basketball dad.
Yep. Who apparently plays for the Clippers. And so already early on, so he comes in and apparently he just got back from like a 4-day work trip, I think the mom says. And already he has to leave for work again. So you already see that kind of problematic situation in his household. Let's see. So Q and his mom go next door to welcome the new neighbors. And this encounter was kind of awkward because Q's mom points out the diversity within the neighborhood, and she's very relaxed and chill. And Monica's mom is very like, she's an uptight woman.
He's very proper.
Also,
yeah, it's very proper.
I mean, I feel like the dichotomy there is kind of like Monica's family and like her mom especially is like definitely they're not leaning into kind of like their blackness in the neighborhood or like in their life, and definitely kind of like Quincy's family probably moved into a neighborhood that was like they were affluent but they were the only like minority in the neighborhood. So like they definitely like the mother especially is kind of like in that moment kind of like really playing up like their presence in the neighborhood, and it does create like this awful awkward tension right between them.
Yeah,
Right. Well, and Q's mom even says this neighborhood used to be all white, really, and now like more and more Black families are coming in, and her mom doesn't really even say anything about that.
It's like commenting.
Yeah, she like does. Yeah, she just like lets that hang, and then they kind of like awkwardly like stumble into like, let's go take a tour of the house. Yeah.
Right. And it's so funny because Q's mom, there's a little bit of a runner before when they're back at Q's house where his dad comes home and she brings out this cake, and there's something about how like she didn't really like make it from scratch or anything like that.
It's a store-bought cake that she puts on a platter to like pass off as a homemade cake. Yeah.
And so then she takes it over to the house, whereas Monica's mom makes everything from scratch.
Yeah. It was like a chef and a caterer. So yeah, that is like a level.
Very, very different dichotomy as well. Like they're both clearly like housewives, because it doesn't seem like Q's mom has a job, but on different levels because of different types of affluence.
One is by choice, one is by necessity. Yeah.
Yeah. Alrighty. So that cake that she baked, she tells Monica, takes it over to, I think, the dining room table. And that's when Q and her start chatting it up. He tells her that he's never met a girl who can play basketball. And that's when she tells him that she's going to play number 32 like magic. I don't know anything about basketball, so a lot of this was gibberish to me. This is where she also mentions, she also mentions that she's going to be the very first girl to play in the NBA. And so I found that confusing. I was like, but I didn't like. This is when I learned that the WNBA was not founded until 96, I think it was.
Yeah, it was very new. And so that's kind of why the final, like the epilogue of the film, spoiler alert, the epilogue of the film is that she's playing in the WNBA. So it was kind of like a very new opportunity.
I know. Yeah, that's shocking to me.
You're like, women basketball playing, what's next?
I know, right?
Well, and what I always find funny about this, like, so Celeste and I did Bend It Like Beckham. And so we had a very similar conversation there where for whatever reason in the UK, they don't have a women's team. But here in the US, we have a women's team that plays soccer.
Yeah.
And very similarly, but on the reverse, there are women's basketball teams outside of the US, but there wasn't one in the US at that time. So it's so interesting to see the dichotomy there.
Girls really do be playing sports sometimes.
I know.
How dare they? What? Their uterus is bouncing around? It's not good for them.
So it looks like later on that evening, Monica's mom comes into the room and Monica's sister's doing her hair. And she brings in a dress for Monica to wear for school the next day. And she's exhausted. And I also think it's important to point that part out, is that the girls notice that clearly the mom is just done. And she's like, yep, I've been up all day. And of course the dad comes in and is like, hey, like, he's like, hey, like, what shirt should I wear? And then he basically gives her more work to do after she's clearly stated, like, I need to rest.
That was the kind of the relationship between Monica's parents is fascinating, because it's like her mother is overworked, is exhausted, has given up a career, and then is just kind of like keeping the household running, and the dad, well-meaning, seems totally oblivious. And then he comes in and is like, iron both of my shirts because I don't know which one I want for tomorrow. And she just is kind of like, well, great, one more, like her, like she doesn't do it, she just sighs, but it's like a one more thing kind of like mentality. And that is very telling. And it's not another note, and I'm sorry, like we're jumping ahead and I apologize for steamrolling your recap, but it's like, there are so many kind of like subplots or kind of like threads that I felt could have been explored a little bit more, or like there are more elements that could have been included in the story. And I think kind of the relationship between her parents is definitely one that I think there is something that could have been kind of expanded upon in ways, rather than being like the dad is supportive but oblivious and her mom is like mad overworked and fucking miserable.
Yeah, I think that is one of the most interesting things about Monica's family is like we get to see Q's both parents. Like both the sides of the relationship on Q's side. With Monica's family, we really only get to see like her mom and the interactions between her mom and her. Yeah. And her dad's there, but not really. But not
He's
there.
always just like, oh, I got to go to the bank and do whatever. Like I'm Mr. Bank or what, like, I don't know what he does there. So it is just like very fascinating to me to kind of watch the times that they all are interacting with one another and the levels within the house.
So we got the next morning, Q stops by so that way they can ride their bikes together to school. This seems so cute. So he asks if she wants, he asks her if she wants to be his girl. And she just responds by saying, what do I have to do?
Like all great relationships.
Right? Like, what do I do?
I feel like we should all be doing that more.
Yeah. You're right. What do you want from me?
What is your idea of being in a relationship?
Right? And his idea, he says, play ball, maybe ride their bikes together to school. And when she gets mad, he can do the flowers. That was my favorite. She says, I don't like flowers. He said, but he can give her Twinkies instead.
A worthy consolation when you've upset your partner.
They kiss for exactly, I believe it's 5 seconds.
5 seconds.
He was literally counting with his fingers. And he tells her that she should, since she is his girl now, that she should ride on his bike now. Monica tells him that she doesn't have to do what he says. He doesn't like that answer. And then they break up right away, and then they get into a fight in the grass. So that relationship lasted like a whole 2 minutes, maybe.
If that. I think it's more like 30 seconds.
Maybe, yeah. We got flash forward to, I want to say their senior year of high school.
Yeah, so it's 1988, 1989. Kind of.
Okay,
like
is this where the second quarter is? I think I missed it. Because I know later on I put third quarter text on screen. I'm like, wait, where was the second quarter? Alrighty, so
the second quarter starts when they're in kind of like these big important basketball games in high school.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you for that. I missed that.
That's okay.
So Monica is playing a high school game, and we see that she gets a technical foul and she gets benched. She gets pretty emotional about it. And so, yeah, she's benched the rest of her game. There is a scout, I believe, or a recruiter there. So, of course, she's extremely upset that she wasn't able to play. And then at home at the dinner table, we meet her father, who is, as we stated, there, but not really there. She tells Mr. Wright that he needs to talk to her coach to let her play. He tells her that really she was out of line. She says all she did was get emotional. So she kind of mentions the whole, when girls get emotional, it's frowned upon. But when guys get emotional, they're just playing a game. They're just high-spirited and all that fun stuff.
Yeah, that was another note that I took about kind of like the difference between like how, especially also when they are in college playing, but definitely kind of like the juxtaposition between like to act and then like how boys playing sports at high school and at like a larger level. That kind of the comparison there was like it's not subtle. They kind of do hit you over the head with it, but it definitely like it's not so apparent that it's distracting, but it is definitely kind of like a larger takeaway from the movie as a whole before it becomes like in the fourth act, especially it's less of a thing.
So Mr. Wright tells her that she needs to consider other possibilities besides basketball because she only has one game left and she still hasn't been recruited. Also at this dinner table, because her mom is of course setting the table along with her sister, who they're very clearly opposites, her and her sister.
Yeah.
She's more of like the girly girl, the type that her mom wants her to be. I think she makes a comment. She's like, oh, like, you're really like smart and you could be pretty if you weren't.
She says something about a tomboy phase, and Monica says something about like, you think that I'm a lesbian.
Mm-hmm.
I was a little like, oh no, how much homophobia is going to be in this movie? But thankfully
because
it did not.
Not the case.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, it takes place in the 80s. Oh,
it was concerning based on the mom's reaction. She was like, she was baffled.
Like,
she's like, don't joke around like that.
Released in the year 2000. This is going to be like big gay panic energy, but I am glad that was not a theme.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then we see Q playing at a school game, and he appears to be doing really well, I'm assuming. His father attends his game, and after the game tells him that he had a talk with the coach at Princeton. She tells him that an Ivy League school will never go all the way, and he of course tells him that he's just more concerned with his education.
That's one of the battles between Q and his father. Like, his dad never got his education. And so his dad is like, you need to learn from my mistakes. And while it's okay that you continue to play ball and everything like that and be an athlete, you still need to actually go and like get your education, finish college, like have that be one of your priorities. And as we continue through the movie, we will see that spiral downward into a plane crash.
Yep. All of it's going to come crashing down. So I forgot to mention, during Q's game, that's when we see
Johnny,
Gabrielle Union's character. Yeah. So she's sitting behind Monica and she asks her to give Q a note. And so on this ride home, Monica decides to read that note. And it's so funny because Q is like, who? And then he's like, oh yeah, the one with the big ass titties.
This is a great time to mention and this is maybe because it is a product of a time, and also it is kind of like a product of like the late 1980s, but also how sexuality was discussed in films of this era. The treatment of women, young women, and the way they're discussed in this scene and kind of like in some of the college scenes was very troubling to me, because Monica's character says something about the girls mailing her coochie to him in this note, and I wrote that down as like a specific line, and I was like, wow, this is so problematic. And it's like, did people like this? But this was the attitude at the time, like of this era. That is how young people viewed other young people's sexuality. It's just like, in 2023, it is mind-boggling to go back and to hear this kind of dialogue because it's unprogressive.
I think I don't know if, I think it still is that way, just said differently.
Different terminology, maybe, yeah.
Yeah. Like I remember going through high school and everything like that. And like, there was always the conversation of the sluts and the prudes. And you were never in between. There was no such thing as an in-between. You were always a slut or a prude. And
you mean a virgin who can't drive?
Exactly. Harsh tie. So, and especially, I know there's this like conversation in the zeitgeist about how specifically Black women are over-sexualized also, especially young Black women. And so it also plays into this as well about like how his mom talks to Q and how she tells him that he needs to stay away from tricks and how he needs to stay away from
tricks.
Promiscuous women. Yeah.
These women who are going to trap him. Yeah.
Yeah. Those women who just the dollar sign.
Yep. Still something that happens. But I also wanted to specify that, ironically enough, Gabrielle Union is actually married to a former NBA star from the Miami Heat.
Yes. Yeah. She is. Yeah.
I saw that note too. Fun stuff.
Art imitating life, life imitating art.
It always comes back around. Like Justin Timberlake says, goes around, comes back around.
So Q also tells her that no one is going to recruit her if she doesn't get rid of that attitude of hers. So when Q gets home, there we go. His mama tells him to watch out for those fast-ass girls because all they want is his money. I think she finds an earring in his bed. Yeah. She's just standing there with it.
And she's like, "What's this?" And he's like, "Oh, that's one of your earrings." Oh, cool. It's like, why would one of her earrings be in your bed, dude? Like,
what kind of movie is this?
That cover up is like big teenage boy energy. Like, I laughed. I guffawed very hard at that.
It's half thought out.
Oh, goodness. So when Q's dad gets home, his parents get into it because, of course, I think she asks him, because he says he's at a meeting. He's always saying he's got to go to a meeting for work. And she's like at midnight. And so they get into it.
Yeah. This, like, right away, even in the scene where it's 1981 and like he has just returned home from like a 4-day road trip with like playing on the road or whatever, and has come home and is like, "Oh, I can't stay, I gotta go to a meeting," and he just like bounces. I'm like, something seems off about this. And then after Quincy's basketball game, he's like, "Oh, tell your mom I'm not coming home, I have a meeting." And I'm like, "Oh, okay, that sounds good." And so it's like they kind of play the hand very early on that there is probably going to be some infidelity mentioned, but like his mom is upset about that and I think suspects something, and which is why they're getting into like a screaming match, amongst why they're getting into a screaming match like in the evening when he returns home. All state dad, I can't believe he'd do that.
He's betrayed us all.
President David Palmer would never.
What the heck? I know, right? So it's actually fun. I actually read that he almost didn't take this role because I guess in a previous role, he also played a cheater. And so he's like, I don't want to do it again. But apparently he ended up taking it because of the father-son relationship and how that dynamic is important to him. So he's back at it again.
I don't want to be typecast.
I know, yeah.
Every movie's like, we need some shitty guy. Let's get him on. Let's get him. His bird on the line.
So when they're fighting, as we'll find out, like that night they're fighting and Quincy can hear it through his walls and he has to leave the room and everything like that. What's kind of funny about that is, as we see from young Quincy, he can hear his parents through the wall, but at that point in time they're having sex, like they're having really loud sex. And then this time he's being kept awake because they're fighting. And so it's like you see how maybe 7 years difference in their marriage, and like the tension of like him being an NBA star and then leaving the NBA, retiring, and like going into this other field, and like perhaps trying to continue on and live vicariously through his stardom still. That the contrast between the scene where like young Quincy does hear them having sex and then when he is a teenager and they're screaming at one another, that is like very smart writing and smart filmmaking in showing that, and showing it so close together too, and like in the editing and kind of like the way the story is unfolding to show how quickly like things are falling apart around him.
I agree. So as you mentioned, Quincy ends up leaving the room, and so he ends up leaving out of his window, and so Monica's room is literally right next door. So he goes over, knocks on the window. Monica wakes up, lets him in, and right away goes to sleep on the floor right next to her. So clearly this is a pattern that happens all the time, apparently, because she was not fazed at it at all.
That was I have a bunch of notes about kind of their relationship over the course of the film, but definitely, it does show like that this is a regular occurrence, and that she is not surprised, and that he is not like, he understands that he can go do this, which I thought like the no dialogue between them and just like knowing glances was very effective.
I really wish that we could have delved more into their actual friendship, because it seems more like they're very contentious with each other throughout the entire movie until like they're together, but we don't really get to see actually like their friendship itself, which really leaves out a whole lot of why they like each other.
Yeah, that was another thing that I had kind of wished, like, the movie has a lot to cover. They do love each other ultimately, even when they are like young and are friends. And so, like, yes, the very familiar kind of tone they take with one another when Monica asks him for a ride home and they're in the car together. There is like, I would love a whole movie of just the two of them like being pals and kind of having like a roasty toasty dynamic with one another to find out how they got to that point and kind of like then what really pushes it to the point where they do end up being together.
So Monica's sister, she's doing her hair. So the school dance is coming up and she's doing her hair. She tells her that she actually found her a date for the dance, this guy from her college.
Monica asks, like, how did you convince a guy from college to go to a dance with me? And she's like, oh, easy. Yeah? I told him that you look like me.
Which was one of the other things I did find problematic in this movie. I'm like, what is a college guy doing at a high school
that was all,
dance?
Definitely when they're at the dance, and we're jumping ahead to when they're at the dance, but they're at the dance and the guy is like, yeah, high school was cool. I don't remember the girls looking as fine as you. And I'm like, whoa, pump the brakes, buddy.
Yeah,
like,
homie.
You should not be. She's probably 17. Let's ooh, yikes.
At most, yeah, because I don't think they ever specify how old Lena is. We just know she's older.
No.
So, like, this guy could be a sophomore, junior in college for all we know. So very
that was just like woof,
disturbing.
woof.
For whatever reason, that went over my head, but I think I was just like too deeply attracted to him to care. So that might have been my bad.
Yeah, I did find him very attractive too. So I don't blame you for that.
Very tall black man. And I was like, oh, hello. Sometimes I get like distracted, and I think it was one of those.
I think so too.
There's too many handsome people in this movie. I cannot focus.
Sometimes I forget to like have like reasonable thoughts.
There's no notes for a certain portion of the movie, and you're like, what was going on? Oh, that man was on the screen.
Oh yeah, I was just like, other than very attractive man, that's the only note.
Oh, that's amazing.
Meanwhile, I'm writing notes about like the longing that's happening across the dance.
Oh yeah, I noticed that too. Oh, and the dresses
and Quincy's shiny shirt. I was like that big high school dance vibe coming from him.
Yeah. Oh, that's amazing. So we are at Monica's championship, and her coach gives them like a pep talk beforehand in their little huddle. He tells them they need to play smart and in control while looking dead at Monica.
Certainly not calling out one specific member of your team.
I know, right?
You say that.
And during the game, we hear Monica's internal thoughts. So she's trying to play.
But that was such a choice in that moment. It's like first person camera and very kind of like disorienting. It's like to put you in the head of somebody who's in a game that's very important. And I kind of wish like it's a device that could have been used elsewhere, honestly. Like it was weird that it was just the one time that they used it, and I feel like it could have been employed elsewhere. But I don't know if it would have been too distracting or kind of like a little overkill. I did really like that choice in that moment.
All right. So there are scouts at this game. Are they scouts or are they called recruiters?
It's
like,
both.
They're called recruiters.
Is it both?
Yeah.
It's the same thing. Okay.
Same dealio.
Same difference. So they're at the game, and so she is working on controlling her emotions. However, they do still end up losing their game. So it is, I believe it's the next night, the night of the dance, and Lena is getting Monica all dressed up, which is something that she's not used to, and she looks beyond beautiful.
She is gorgeous. Absolutely gorgeous.
Yes. So her mother comes in. She sees her for the first time dressed up like a proper lady, let's say. And so she sees her and she says, get your grandmother's pearls. So she puts the pearls on her. She tells her that to just try to forget the game and enjoy being beautiful.
That was a note that I took, was the line "enjoy being beautiful," because it felt like, I get that it's well intended in big air quotes, but it was also
Yeah.
very cutting, because it was kind of like, you think your daughter is fugly for sure, and like to never dresses like a lady, and that like there's like a lot of weight in that line.
I agree. Yeah. I know it was well intended, like you said, but it also felt like a kind of backhanded compliment.
Yeah. There were a lot of just single lines that I wrote down, or like single moments that I wrote down, and that was definitely like one that I was kind of like, both times I watched it, I was like, oh, there's a lot, as my therapist would say, there's a lot to unpack there.
Yes. And it was a heavy moment for Monica too, because she asks her if she really thinks that she's beautiful. So obviously it's not something she ever hears from her mom, which is a lot to unpack there too. Her mom just smiles at her and she says, honey, hush.
So let's talk about this dance when things are really going to happen.
So this very 90s dance. Let's see. So Q is dancing with, I feel like I skipped a whole part, but I'm just going to read it anyways. Q is dancing with Shawnee, and Monica shows up with her, as Kenzie mentioned, very attractive, tall, college date.
So damn attractive.
Q sees Monica from a distance, and he just looks her up and down and says, damn. Her college date, I think that was just my comment. Her college date is just giving very pervy, creepy vibes. Again, like you mentioned, when they sit down and he's, that's my only comment, is just creepy and gross. But I thought it was funny when they walked in, he offers to take her coat and she's like, are you cold?
That is funny. She's like never understood like human interaction in a dating context.
To the person who said that this didn't have any like funny dialogue, I would ask you to reconsider that scene, because that line read is incredible. The way she says that.
Once again, we're pretty sure that the people who rate these 1 out of 10 have never seen the movies that they're rating.
I think in Whale Rider, 1 out of 10 comment said, there's no whales. And we're like, we can point out like multiple times there's whales in this movie. And like
within the first 20 minutes, there's a whale.
In the first opening scene, there's a whale. But yeah, so both Monica and Q are dancing with their dates. But as we stated, they are longing for each other on that dance floor. And that is the night. And Monica comes home, but she sees, of course, again, her exhausted mom sleeping through the window. And you can tell she feels bad because she ends up going inside through her bedroom window. But I just wanted to comment, what is it like leaving your doors unlocked, your windows unlocked, and still feeling safe? And like,
it's like no life I'll ever know.
I know, we will never know what that's like.
I used to leave my car unlocked, but that's because I had a 94 Escort and nobody was going to steal that shit. I think I had to manually roll down my windows, so nobody was taking that.
Always locked. Just coming in through the window was, I was like, that's okay. It's open. Okay.
When she gets inside, she sees a letter on her side table. She sees Q's in his room and she calls him over. They have like a little moment where they're talking about what they did with their dates later on. Q claims that he just dropped his girlfriend off, not girlfriend, but Shawnee off, that he's like, I'm not that kind of guy. I guess Monica and her date went somewhere, made out for a bit.
Yeah, she keeps accidentally, air quotes, elbowing him while he's trying to make out with her. And she was like not into it and like very distracted.
Mm-hmm. I want to say fouls.
How many rebounds she had.
Or rebounds.
It was how many rebounds she had. And this is one of my notes, is that like they do really love each other, even in this kind of moment before they kind of like become more than friends. Like we do, he knocks on her window as a means of like escaping his family so he can sleep on her floor and they don't have to say anything to one another. And then this moment when she's talking about how she was so distracted during her date and she's like, I can't remember how many rebounds I had, he tells her, and it's kind of like he's at the games, it seems like he's disinterested at the games, but he is there and he is paying attention. And he has this information, so he does care. And it's kind of like this bond that they have is very compelling to watch. And it's one of these moments again where it's kind of like, I wish we had more of that, or like there was more to that to kind of fill out what then ultimately happens in this scene.
Agreed.
So he ends up opening the letter for her, and he tells her that she got recruited, she got in. He also ends up sharing that he too got recruited, that they want him, so they will be going to a USC together.
So I had a question. I felt like he had just decided in that moment that he was going to go to USC once he found out that she got into USC.
Ooh.
I hadn't considered that.
I didn't consider that either.
Because it was never really announced.
Right.
So that's interesting. That's an interesting take on that.
I felt like because there was so much like back and forth about like which school he was going to go to and that they weren't saying until forever, I felt like he didn't want to choose. And then the moment that he opened up that letter and saw which school that she was going to, that's when he decided, oh, you know what? I want to go to that school and I want to go with her.
Yeah, I like that. I like that read
on
that scene, the way that unfolds. Yeah.
Interesting thought, Kenzie.
I have those every once in a while.
You're like, see, I did take some notes. It wasn't just super hot guy.
I mean, I know that Omar Epps still distracts me also, but I can pay attention every so often.
So I know my description doesn't do it justice for this scene. They kiss, they end up making out in the grass a little bit, and they ended up doing it.
In her room. So like she actively stops him from trying to do it in the grass. And it seems like they're going to stop all the way. And then she's like, no, let's go into my room.
Yes.
And then
that glance, that look back, that
I was so dumbfounded because the entire time she's literally holding her boobs while they're doing it. Like the entire time she's holding her bib, she's holding her chest. And I was like, how unbelievably awkward, but at least he was safe.
I think super awkward first times. Like I hate it when you watch like teeny boppers and then when the person loses their virginity, it's like all romantic and they clearly know what they're doing. And then, but in reality, it's not. Or is that just me?
I did appreciate the awkwardness of the scene.
Too, yeah.
More on her part than on his part. So one of my notes, and this is a perfect time to talk about the soundtrack. I would love, if I may, to talk about the use of Maxwell's cover of This Woman's Work during this scene. With This Woman's Work, originally a Kate Bush song. And the original, as you would expect with a Kate Bush song, a little scary. And Kate Bush had her moment, but she still frightens me so, despite my best efforts. But so the thing with, and I don't know how much either of you did kind of like a dive into the soundtrack for this film at all. Like any at all, none at all, a little bit.
Not as much, just enjoyed it as we were going through.
Yep.
This Woman's Work, so the version that's used in the film was recorded for Maxwell's MTV Unplugged album. The studio version of it was released on his album Now, which came out the following year. So it's like a live version of it that plays. And my note, so this was the first time I heard that song start and I gasped. Like I actually like gasped out loud. I love this song so much. But my note that I took was, this is literally the saddest song to fuck to. It is a heartbreaking song. It is like his version of it in that falsetto. Like I get that it's an R&B slow jam, but it is so heartbreaking. It's so somber. I'm like, imagining two teenagers having awkward sex for the first time while Maxwell, this woman's work, is playing. I was just kind of like, but also this is making me feel some type of way. And I don't know, like, it was just such an interesting, like a genuinely interesting usage of this song. And it is impressive that they were like, well, we need this and we need this live version of it to use here.
See, and I thought that song was very interesting also because when it came on, I was like, I don't think that this matches. I don't think this matches at all.
It does also break the time period because it's like the original, like the Kate Bush version is not from 1988 and the Maxwell cover is from like the mid 90s.